My name is Marcus Bennett. I'm a bodyguard by trade, an elite force operator by training, and the son of a man who's a ghost story in the security world, a legend you don't name. Logically, my 9-to-5 should involve motorcades, firefights, and protecting world leaders. But one command from my old man, and here I am, sentenced to a year as a regular office drone to experience real life. My title is Executive Assistant. My new boss is the billionaire CEO of Sterling Enterprises, Victoria Sterling, known to the world as the Ice Queen. She's cold, untouchable, the woman every man dreams of and no man gets near. On my first day, she slapped a contract down on my desk. Sign it. Be my husband for 1 year. I'll solve your family's problems. $10 million a year. She thought I was some desperate assistant she could wrap around her finger. She had no idea the man she'd just hired as a fake husband could fight his way through her entire skyscraper security detail without breaking a sweat. She also had no idea her stubborn, unyielding grandfather was one of my father's oldest army buddies. This is the story of how an elite protector masquerading as a corporate nobody got roped into a contract marriage with a beautiful CEO and ended up neutralizing every threat that came her way. Never piss off the guy who brings you coffee. You never know when he might just save your entire company. Marcus, give me a coffee. Black. The voice, crisp and cool, drifted from the CEO's office. I put down the employee handbook and stood up. I'm Marcus Bennett, 25 years old. Today, my identity is the newly hired assistant to Victoria Sterling, CEO of Sterling Enterprises. My previous identity is complicated, classified. Let's just say my current duties of making coffee and running copies are a significant change of pace. I walked into the break room and stared at a coffee machine that looked older than I was. This thing was more complex than disarming a bomb. A few female colleagues were gossiping nearby. Did you hear? Derek Montgomery is here again. That creep never gives up. God, Miss Sterling has it rough. Running a company this huge at her age and having to deal with guys like him. He's just some trust fund brat. Thinks because his father's company has a partnership with us, he has a shot. As if. I measured out the coffee beans, one ear tuned to the office grapevine. It seemed my beautiful boss's life wasn't as perfect as it looked from the outside. Before the coffee was even brewed, a commotion erupted from the main office floor. A young guy in a flashy Armani suit, his hair shellacked with enough gel to be a fire hazard, strutted in holding a bouquet of roses the size of a small car. Victoria, my love. I've come to see you. His voice was high and grating like a rooster with a sore throat. 2 hulking bodyguards trailed behind him. The company security guards tried to stop him, but they looked terrified. Victoria emerged from her office. She wore a tailored white suit, her dark hair pulled back in an elegant twist. Her face was a mask of cold indifference, but she was still stunning enough to stop traffic. The air around her seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mr. Montgomery, she said, her voice like ice. This is a place of business. Please leave. Don't be like that, baby, Derek Montgomery grinned, shoving the flowers at her. 999 roses for my eternal love. Victoria didn't take them. She didn't even look at them. Security, please escort him out. Who dares? Derek's bodyguards took a menacing step forward. Our security team exchanged nervous glances, none of them moving. Derek's grin widened. Victoria, my father said that if you agree to marry me, he'll sweeten our partnership deal by another 5%. That's hundreds of millions of dollars. You should think about it. He reached out, trying to grab her hand. I walked out of the break room holding a freshly brewed cup of black coffee, and then I accidentally twisted my ankle. The mug flew from my hand. The scalding hot coffee sailed through the air and landed with perfect precision all over the front of Derek's $10,000 Armani suit. Arg! He shrieked and jumped back as if he'd been electrocuted. The entire office fell silent. Every eye was on me. I put on my most convincing, panic-stricken face. Oh my God, Mr. Montgomery, I'm so sorry. I'm not usually so clumsy. My foot just gave out. Derek looked down at the massive brown stain blooming on his chest. His face turned a shade of sickly green. You son of a bitch. Do you have any idea how much this suit costs? He raised his hand to slap me. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Just then, I let out a pained gasp and collapsed to the floor, clutching my ankle. My ankle. I think it's broken. Oh, the pain. My performance was Oscar-worthy. I even managed to squeeze out a few beads of sweat on my forehead. Derek's hand froze midair. He couldn't very well assault an employee who was clearly suffering a workplace injury, not in front of this many witnesses. Useless trash, he snarled, shooting me a hateful glare. He turned back to Victoria, his greasy smile back in place. Victoria, see the kind of clumsy oafs you hire. Fine, I'll be the bigger man today. I'll come see you again soon. He and his goons stormed out. Silence returned to the office floor. Victoria walked over to me. She looked down at me, still sprawled on the ground, her expression unreadable. Is your ankle okay? I think so. I struggled to my feet, putting on a dramatic limp. My office. Now. She turned and walked away. I hobbled after her. Inside, she sat in her leather throne of a chair and just stared at me for a solid 30 seconds. It was starting to make my skin crawl. Had she seen through my act? Your name is Marcus Bennett, she finally asked. Yes. You just started today. Yes. She pulled a file from her desk drawer and tossed it in front of me. Sign it. I blinked, then picked it up. Across the top in bold black letters were 2 words, prenuptial agreement. I was speechless. My first day on the job, and my CEO was proposing marriage. Was this some kind of next-level corporate hazing? Miss Sterling, I said, completely bewildered. What is this? It's simple, Victoria said. Be my husband for 1 year. A contract. I'll help you with your family's troubles. You'll help me by getting rid of the unwanted attention. The salary is $10 million a year. After 1 year, we part ways. No strings attached. She looked at me, her gaze filled with the unshakable confidence of a queen who knew she held all the cards. She thought she had me cornered, a brand new assistant faced with a $10 million salary and a boss who looked like a supermodel. No one could possibly refuse. What she didn't know was that my family's troubles consisted of my old man thinking I was getting lazy sitting around the house. And as for $10 million, my commission for a 1-hour mission last year was 10 times that amount. Still, the role of contract husband did sound interesting, a hell of a lot more interesting than making coffee. Anyway, I have one question, I said. Speak. Does the contract specify which spousal duties I'll be expected to perform? I looked at her and gave her my most innocent, angelic smile. A faint blush colored Victoria's cheeks, gone almost as soon as it appeared. Don't ask questions that aren't your business, her voice was back to its usual Arctic temperature. Are you signing or not? I picked up the pen and signed my name on the last page. I am, I said. Boss. After I signed that ridiculous prenup, my job description changed dramatically. I went from executive assistant to executive assistant and contract husband to the CEO. Victoria gave me a black Amex. The pin is your birthday. From now on, all of my personal expenses go on this card. Publicly, I want you to act like my trophy husband. I looked at the card. I was tempted to tell her that my family owned the bank that issued it, but I held my tongue. If you're going to play a part, you go all in. You got it, boss, I said, pocketing the card. Any other instructions? After work today, you're coming home with me, she said. To meet my grandfather. Meeting the family. I raised an eyebrow. Moving fast, aren't we? My grandfather is the one pushing hardest for me to get married, she said, rubbing her temples. We have to get him on board first. She added, glancing at me, don't worry. He's stubborn, but he's a good man. Just try not to blow your cover. I nodded. Acting. I was a professional. After work, I slid into the passenger seat of Victoria's red Bentley. The car wound its way toward a sprawling estate in Greenwich. The place was a fortress. The guards at the gate were armed with tactical rifles, not just pistols. I could tell by their posture and the way their eyes scanned everything that they were former military, and not the kind that pushed paper. So, what does your family do? I asked casually. We're in small business, Victoria said flatly. Yeah, right. Small business owners don't hire security teams that could repel a small invasion. The car pulled up to the main villa. An old man in a sharp tweed jacket, leaning on a cane but standing ramrod straight, was waiting for us. This had to be her grandfather, Harold Sterling. His eyes were sharp like a hawk. When he saw me get out of the car, his brow furrowed. Victoria, he said, his voice a powerful baritone. This is the young man you've chosen. Grandfather, Victoria said, linking her arm through his. This is Marcus Bennett. We're already married. What? The end of Mr. Sterling. The end of Mr. Sterling's cane struck the stone patio with a sharp crack. Nonsense. He stared at me, his eyes practically boring holes in my suit. You, boy, what do you do? Where are you from? Who are your people? The questions came like machine gun fire. Before I could open my mouth, Victoria jumped in. Grandfather, Marcus is an orphan. He worked for me at the company as my assistant. An orphan. An assistant. The lines on his forehead deepened. This is the man our family's heiress marries? This specimen. His words were laced with contempt. Victoria's face hardened. Grandfather, you. Be quiet, he snapped. He looked back at me with a cold sneer. Boy, don't think I don't know what you're after. Trying to marry into the Sterling family and climb the ladder. Let me tell you, that door is closed. Today, if you can last 10 exchanges with my 3 best men, I'll acknowledge you as my grandson-in-law. And if you can't. He paused. Then you will get the hell out of here and never appear in front of Victoria again. With a wave of his hand, 3 men in black workout gear stepped forward. They were built like refrigerators with cauliflower ears and knuckles like walnuts. These weren't gym rats. These were men who had seen real violence. Victoria's face went pale. Grandfather, you can't do this. What? Worried about your new pet? He snorted. I gently tugged on her sleeve. It's fine. I smiled at her before walking toward the 3 men. I shrugged off my suit jacket, tossed it to Victoria, and loosened my tie. All 3 of you, I said. At once. I'm in a hurry. I've got dinner to make. The 3 men stared at me like I was an idiot. Mr. Sterling actually laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. Good. Excellent, he said 3 times. Let's see what a cocky little punk like you is made of. The words had barely left his mouth when the biggest of the 3 charged. He closed the distance in a heartbeat, a heavy pile-driving punch aimed straight for my face. A hit like that would leave a normal man with a severe concussion, if not worse. I didn't move. Just as his fist was about to connect, I shifted. A slight turn of my body, and the punch whistled past my ear. My hand moved like a snake, coiling around his extended arm. With a small, sharp twist, crack. The man's arm bent at an unnatural angle. He let out a scream that was barely human. The other 2 were stunned for a second, then roared and attacked from either side. I just shook my head. Too slow, too many openings. I took a single step forward, my body flowing like a leaf in the wind, slipping right through the gap in their attack. My elbow and knee struck their ribs and joints simultaneously. 2 more sickening cracks of breaking bone. The 2 men collapsed like sacks of laundry. The whole thing took less than 5 seconds. Mr. Sterling and everyone around him were frozen, their mouths hanging open. They were looking at me like I was some kind of monster. I dusted off my hands and walked over to him. Sir, I said. I think 10 exchanges was a little optimistic. 3 was plenty. Mr. Sterling stared at me, his expression more serious than I'd ever seen. After a long moment, he spoke, his voice low. Who in God's name are you? I smiled. I told you already, I said. I'm your grandson-in-law. In the end, Mr. Sterling grudgingly accepted me as his new off-the-rack grandson-in-law. The way he looked at me was a complex mix of admiration, suspicion, and a deep, probing curiosity I couldn't quite decipher. He'd probably pegged me as the scion of some secret, powerful family sent out into the world to prove myself. Dinner was served in a tense, surreal atmosphere. Mr. Sterling didn't say a word, but he kept piling food onto my plate: roast chicken with some rare, expensive mushrooms, a whole grilled branzino that probably cost more than my first car, until my plate looked like a small mountain. Victoria just watched, dumbfounded. It was the first time in her life she'd ever seen her grandfather show a young man such hospitality. After dinner, he called me into his study alone. "Kid," he said, getting straight to the point. "Tell me the truth. What's your story? What's your angle with Victoria?" "Sir," I said, "I'm just a normal guy who works a 9 to 5. I fell for your granddaughter the moment I saw her. Couldn't imagine marrying anyone else. I laid it on so thick, I almost believed it myself." Mr. Sterling studied my face for a long time. "All right," he finally nodded. "I don't care who you are. All I ask is that you treat her right. If I ever find out you've hurt her, I won't." "I won't," I cut in. "See that you don't." He opened a drawer and took out a polished mahogany box, handing it to me. "This is a Sterling family heirloom, a vintage Cartier diamond bracelet. It's yours now." I opened the box. Inside, a river of perfectly cut diamonds glittered under the light. It was breathtaking and priceless. "Sir, this is too much. Take it." His tone left no room for argument. "From this day on, you're part of this family." I had no choice but to accept it. It was late when we finally left the estate. Victoria was silent the whole drive back, but I could feel her eyes on me in the rearview mirror. "Whatever you want to ask, just ask it," I said. "You." She hesitated. "Who are you really? What do you think?" "I don't know." She shook her head. "But you're not a normal assistant." "What makes you say that?" "Those 3 men, my grandfather's bodyguards, they're all retired Army Rangers. Any one of them could take on 10 men, and you took down all 3 of them in 5 seconds." Her voice was full of questions she wasn't asking. "I took some martial arts classes when I was younger," I said casually. "Right." She clearly didn't believe me, but she dropped it. The car didn't head back toward my small rental apartment. Instead, we pulled into the underground garage of a sleek, modern high-rise in Tribeca. "You'll live here from now on," she said, leading me into a sprawling, exquisitely furnished penthouse. "This is our home," she said for appearances. "I'll take the master bedroom. You take the guest room. You are not to step foot in my room without my permission." The Ice Queen was back, her voice laced with its usual cool authority. "Got it, boss," I nodded. "And another thing," she added. "In public, you must always remember your role. You're my husband." "Understood. It's part of the job description." She stated this as if that explained everything. I looked at her beautiful, deadly serious face and had to suppress a laugh. This woman was actually kind of adorable. Later that night, I came out of the guest room after a shower, dressed in a pair of sweats. Victoria was sitting on the living room sofa in a silk slip, nursing a glass of red wine. In the soft lamplight, the perfect lines of her body were a breathtaking silhouette. The air suddenly felt thick with something I couldn't name. She looked up and saw me, and her composure faltered for a second. A faint blush rose on her cheeks. Ahem, she cleared her throat. "I couldn't sleep. Just having a nightcap." "Okay," I nodded, turning to go back to my room. "Wait," she called out. "Yeah. There's an important gala tomorrow night," she said. "You'll be accompanying me." "A gala?" "Yes. Derek Montgomery will be there." I understood immediately. She was bringing her official husband to make a statement. "No problem," I said, "but I don't have a suit for that kind of thing. I've already taken care of it." She pointed to a gift box on the sofa. I walked over and opened it. Inside was a custom-tailored Armani tuxedo. It looked suspiciously like the one I'd ruined for Derek, only this one was black. "Wear this," she said, her voice holding a new commanding edge. "Tomorrow, I want everyone to know that you are my man." I looked at her eyes that seemed to burn a little brighter in the lamplight. I smiled. "As you wish," I said. "Your Majesty." The next evening's gala was held in the grand ballroom of a 5-star hotel overlooking Central Park. Dressed in the Armani tux, I had to admit I cleaned up pretty well. I almost looked the part. Victoria wore a stunning strapless black evening gown that clung to her curves in all the right places. The moment she entered, she owned the room. Every head turned. We walked in arm, the perfect power couple, immediately drawing whispers from the crowd. Who is that guy? I've never seen him before. I don't know, but to be on Victoria Sterling's arm, he has to be somebody. The way they're acting. Could that be her boyfriend? Derek Montgomery, the trust fund brat himself, was there. The moment he saw Victoria clinging to my arm, his eyes turned murderous. He stalked over, a glass of champagne in his hand. Victoria, he said, his voice dripping with acid. And who is this? Victoria leaned just a little closer to me. Let me introduce you, she said, her voice clear and carrying across the suddenly quiet room. This is my husband, Marcus Bennett. The entire ballroom went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone stared at us in disbelief. The Ice Queen, Victoria Sterling, was married to some unknown pretty boy. This was the biggest news of the year. Derek's face went beyond pale. It was a ghastly shade of green. Husband, he stammered, pointing at me. The little assistant who pours your coffee. Mr. Montgomery, I said, my voice dropping low and cold. I'd appreciate it if you showed my wife some respect. Wife. The word hung in the air. I felt Victoria tremble almost imperceptibly beside me. The tips of her ears turned pink. Respect. Derek sneered, almost spitting. You're nothing. You think I don't know who you are? I can make one phone call and have you erased from this city. He was threatening me. I laughed. Really? I said. You believe that? Because I believe I can make one phone call and have your entire Montgomery Industries erased from this planet. A collective gasp went through the room. They all thought I was insane. Montgomery Industries was a titan, a multi-billion-dollar empire, and I was just some assistant running his mouth. Derek looked like he'd just heard the funniest joke in the world. Haha, he roared with laughter. Are you kidding me, you little punk? You think you have that kind of power? I do, I nodded. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number. Hey, old man. My father's familiar booming voice roared back. You brat. You finally remembered you have a father. I was beginning to think you died out there. Yeah. Cut the drama, I said impatiently. I need you to do something. Montgomery Industries. You've heard of them. Montgomery. My dad paused. Oh, the real estate guys. Why? They give you trouble. Yeah. All right, I got it, he said. Check the news in 10 minutes. He hung up. The whole call took less than 30 seconds. Derek was still laughing, a smug, arrogant smirk on his face. Keep bluffing, asshole. Let's see what kind of magic trick you can pull off in 10 minutes. The rest of the guests were watching me with pity and amusement. They all thought I was putting on a pathetic show. Only Victoria looked at me with a flicker of concern in her eyes. I gave her a small smile, a silent promise that everything was okay. 10 minutes passed. The large screen in the ballroom, which had been showing boring financial news, suddenly switched to a breaking news alert. We interrupt this program with a developing story. Real estate giant Montgomery Industries was just exposed for massive accounting fraud and tax evasion. The chairman has been taken into federal custody. All company assets have been frozen, and their stock has plummeted to zero. The room exploded. Everyone stared from the screen to me, standing there calmly, and back again. Derek's laughter died in his throat. His face went chalk white. The champagne flute slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking as he tried to call his father. The call went straight to a cold, automated voice. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. He was finished. He collapsed to the floor, mumbling to himself. It's over. It's all over. I walked over and looked down at him. I told you, I said. Don't make a scene on my turf. Do you believe me now? The fall of Montgomery Industries was like a nuclear bomb detonating in the business world. Overnight, the name Marcus Bennett was on the lips of every member of the city's elite. Everyone was trying to figure out who I was. How could one man with a single phone call vaporize a $100 billion corporation? Some said I was the heir to a powerful DC political dynasty. Others whispered I was the secret successor to a shadowy European financial cartel. A few even speculated I was part of some off-the-books government agency. The theories were wild. I had become the city's greatest mystery, the one man you did not cross. All I could think was, you people have very active imaginations. After the gala, Victoria drove us home. She was back in silent mode, but I kept catching her eyes in the rearview mirror, studying me. She looked like a cat that had just seen a dog do a magic trick. "Boss," I finally said. "You keep looking at me like that, I'm going to have to start charging you." Her face flushed. Who are you really?" There it was again, the question. "I told you," I said. "I'm your legally contracted husband, Marcus." "Marcus." Her voice was sharp. "I'm not joking." "Neither am I." I turned to look at her, my expression completely serious. "Look, we had a legally binding prenuptial agreement, and I just solved a very big problem for you. By all rights, you should probably be calling me honey by now, don't you think?" Victoria was speechless. The blush on her cheeks deepened, spreading to the tips of her ears. The Ice Queen, a woman who ate corporate sharks for breakfast, was flustered by a simple term of endearment. Maybe she wasn't made of ice after all. Maybe, just maybe, she was even a little bit cute. The car pulled into our building's garage. The second we were inside the apartment, Victoria pushed me against the wall. A wall slam. I blinked. This wasn't how I saw this scene playing out. "Marcus," she said, her eyes locked on mine, more serious than I had ever seen them. "I don't care who you are, and I don't care what your motives are, but from this day forward, you are forbidden from using your family's power without my permission." "Why?" "Because," she said, her voice full of a surprising fire, "I am your boss, and everything you do is under my authority." It was the most domineering thing anyone had ever said to me. But for some reason, I wasn't offended. In fact, it was kind of sweet. "All right," I nodded. "But I have a condition of my own." "What is it?" "From now on, I do the cooking." Victoria stared at me. "What?" "But," I added, "you do the dishes." She looked at me for a long moment, and then a sound I'd never heard from her before, a genuine laugh. It was like watching a glacier melt in the spring, revealing a field of wildflowers. I'll admit, for a second, it took my breath away. "Okay," she nodded. "Deal." From that day on, our cohabitation entered a new phase. Me, a mysterious powerhouse who could topple empires, spent my evenings debating the merits of braised short ribs versus chicken parmesan. And Victoria, the formidable CEO who dominated boardrooms, came home every night, tied on an apron, and went to war with the pile of dishes I left in the sink. We developed a strange, comfortable rhythm. At the office, she was my boss and I was her assistant. At home, she was my dishwasher and I was her personal chef. We both played our roles, careful not to cross the line drawn by our contract. But some things you can't hide, like the way she would sneak up behind me while I was cooking and wrap her arms around my waist, using a lame excuse like, "just checking to make sure you're not sampling the ingredients." Or the way I would find her asleep on the sofa, a spreadsheet still glowing on her laptop, and carry her to bed, then lie the next morning and tell her she must have sleepwalked. The piece of paper between us, the one labeled contract, was starting to feel very, very thin. The peace didn't last long. Trouble came knocking again. This time, it wasn't a spoiled brat like Derek Montgomery. This was a real predator, a ruthless corporate raider from overseas. His name was Adrian Thornfield. He was a shark, a man who would burn down the world to make a buck. He had his eyes on a new green energy technology developed by Sterling Enterprises and wanted to buy it for pennies on the dollar. Victoria refused without a second thought, so he started playing dirty. He used his influence in the market to short our stock, spreading vicious rumors and manufacturing bad press. Our share price took a nosedive. The board started getting restless. "Victoria, maybe we should just sell the tech to Mr. Thornfield," one of the older board members suggested during a meeting. "Yes, there's no need to make an enemy of a man like that over something that's not even profitable yet," another chimed in. the company's old guard was openly pressuring her. She was being attacked from all sides, and the stress was getting to her. Seeing the exhaustion on her face, the dark circles under her eyes, it made something ache in my chest. One night, she was in her home office working late again. I brought her a glass of warm milk. "Drink this," I said. "Then get some sleep." She looked up, her eyes bloodshot. "Marcus," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Am I failing? Why would you say that? I can't even protect my own company. My grandfather, he must be so disappointed in me." I heard a vulnerability in her voice I'd never heard before. I put the milk down on her desk, then reached out and gently pulled her up from her chair. I wrapped my arms around her. She was so thin, and she felt cold. She trembled slightly in my embrace like a small wounded animal. "Don't be afraid," I whispered in her ear. "I've got you." The next day, I didn't go to the office. I had Victoria call me in sick. The official story was a bad case of food poisoning. I changed into an anonymous set of jeans and a hoodie, pulled on a baseball cap and a face mask, and left the apartment. I made my way to the 5-star hotel where Adrian Thornfield was staying. I didn't use the front door. I found a discreet access point at the rear of the building and scaled the exterior wall like a spider, silent and unseen, all the way up to the presidential suite on the top floor. I slipped in through the balcony door. The suite was empty. I walked over to his desk and opened his laptop. For me, there's no such thing as an uncrackable password. It took me less than 30 seconds to find everything I needed, all the evidence of Thornfield's crimes, market manipulation, money laundering, even his connections to an international crime syndicate. Any one of these files was enough to put him in a maximum security prison for the rest of his life. I copied the data to a thumb drive. Then I left him a little parting gift. Using his computer, I transferred every last cent from his numerous offshore accounts to a Doctors Without Borders fund for African relief. Finally, I used his email account to send a single message to the contact list of every major news outlet and financial institution in the world. The message was simple: I am a fool, and I apologize to the world for my breathtaking stupidity. With my work done, I left as silently as I'd arrived. The next day, the global financial world was in chaos. The corporate predator Adrian Thornfield had been wiped out overnight. Worse, he was now the subject of an international manhunt, wanted for a laundry list of serious financial crimes. The crisis at Sterling Enterprises vanished as if it had never happened. Our stock price didn't just recover, it soared to a record high. The old guard on the board were suddenly Victoria's biggest cheerleaders, falling all over themselves to praise her strategic genius. Victoria became the hero of the hour, lauded for her cunning and resilience. Only she knew the truth. She hadn't done a thing except stay home to make chicken noodle soup for her assistant who was supposedly dying from food poisoning. That evening, when I got home, Victoria didn't go to the kitchen to do the dishes. She just stood in the living room waiting for me. "It was you, wasn't it?" "What was?" I played dumb. "Adrian Thornfield." "Oh, him." I shrugged. "Guess karma finally caught up with him. What goes around comes around. Marcus." She looked me straight in the eye. "Can you please, for once, just tell me the truth?" I looked at her, at those beautiful eyes filled with a stubborn, unwavering resolve. I sighed. "All right," I said. "The truth is, I don't like seeing you unhappy." After the Adrian Thornfield incident, the way Victoria looked at me changed. The curiosity was still there, but it was mixed with something else now, something I couldn't quite name. It felt like reliance, like trust, and maybe even a little bit of awe. Even a strong woman needs a safe harbor, and it seemed that without even realizing it, I had become hers. She started opening up to me, sharing things she'd never told anyone, her frustrations at work, the little annoyances of her day. She even told me embarrassing stories from her childhood, like how she still wet the bed when she was 6, or how a group of older boys had cornered her in an alley when she was in middle school, and she proceeded to beat the crap out of all of them. That's when I learned my ice queen was a trained fighter. "My grandfather insisted I take self-defense classes," she explained. "He always said a woman needs to know how to protect herself." Looking at her face, animated with a hint of pride as she recounted the story, my heart ached a little. This was a girl who should have been carefree but instead had been forced to grow up too fast, to be strong and independent, to carry the weight of a corporate empire on her shoulders. Her childhood must have been incredibly lonely. By the way, she said, her expression shifting. This weekend is the anniversary of my parents' death. Would you come with me to visit them? Her voice was soft, laced with a vulnerability that was so rare for her. Of course, I said without hesitation. That Saturday, I drove with her to a quiet, beautiful cemetery just outside the city. Her parents' headstone was immaculate, clearly tended to with love and care. She placed a bouquet of white lilies at the base of the stone and just stood there in silence. I could feel the waves of sorrow rolling off her. After a long time, she finally spoke. They died in a car accident, she said, her voice quiet. I was 18. Everyone thought the company was finished. All our relatives started circling like vultures, trying to carve up the estate for themselves. It was my grandfather. He fought everyone and put me in charge as CEO. For years, I survived on 4 hours of sleep a night. I worked and studied like a maniac. I couldn't afford to make a single mistake. I was so terrified that I would be the one to lose everything my parents had built. Her voice was calm, but beneath the surface, I could hear years of unimaginable pain and pressure. I reached out and took her hand. It was ice cold. It's over now, I said softly. She turned to look at me, her eyes glistening. Marcus, she said. Thank you. For what? For coming into my life. As we were leaving the cemetery, a light rain began to fall. We were driving down a quiet country road when suddenly a black cargo van shot out from a side street, swerving to block our path. I slammed on the brakes. The Bentley's tires screamed on the wet pavement. The van's side door slid open, and 7 or 8 masked men armed with steel pipes and machetes jumped out, charging our car. Crack! One of the thugs smashed a pipe against the windshield. A spiderweb of cracks appeared on the ballistic glass. Victoria's face went white. Don't worry. I put a hand on her arm, stopping her from reaching for the pistol I knew she kept in her glove compartment. I had my own peace, but I wouldn't need it today. Hold on tight. I stomped on the accelerator. The Bentley roared like an enraged bull and plowed directly into the van. Crunch. The van was thrown into the air, flipping over twice before landing in a heap of twisted metal. The thugs stared in stunned silence. They clearly hadn't expected me to fight back so aggressively. I pushed my door open and stepped out into the rain. Who sent you? I asked, my voice flat and cold. The men exchanged glances, then charged at me, waving their weapons. Wrong answer. I shook my head and moved. I was a phantom in the rain, a blur of motion. Every strike I made was met with the sickening crunch of breaking bone and a scream of agony. In less than a minute, all of them were on the ground, writhing in pain. Not a single one was getting back up. I walked over to the leader, a man with a nasty scar across his face, and planted my foot on his chest. Talk, was all I said. The man looked up at me, his eyes wide with a primal terror, as if he were staring at the devil himself. It was Thornfield, he stammered. Some of his men, they hired us. Said we needed to teach the lady a lesson. Understood. Remnants of Thornfield's network, still loyal, still stupid. I pulled out my phone and dialed my father. Old man, I need you to find someone for me. A financial crook named Adrian Thornfield. I don't care how you do it. I want him to permanently disappear from this world. And while you're at it, clean up his entire network of thugs and wannabe gangsters. I don't want this happening again. I hung up. I knew that from this day forward, the world would have one less problem named Adrian Thornfield. I got back in the car. Victoria was still in the passenger seat, looking at me with an expression of pure shock. You told. Before I could cut her off, I wasn't a part of your past, but your future. I looked at her and smiled. I'm here to protect it. After the last of Adrian Thornfield's associates vanished, our lives returned to a state of calm, but something fundamental had shifted between us. For starters, Victoria didn't make me sleep in the guest room anymore, claiming the air conditioning was broken. She insisted I move into the master bedroom, on the floor, of course. She also stopped calling me her assistant and forbade me from calling her Miss Sterling or boss. At home, she said, I was to call her Victoria. We were equals, she insisted. Partners. I could feel the distance between us shrinking every day. One Saturday morning, I was in the kitchen making breakfast. Victoria shuffled out of the bedroom in a ridiculously cute set of teddy bear pajamas, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Marcus, she mumbled. I'm hungry. Coming right up. I slid a perfectly fried heart-shaped egg onto a plate and set it in front of her. Wow, she said, her eyes lighting up. You're amazing. You can even make eggs in the shape of your love for me. I didn't have the heart to tell her I'd just bought a heart-shaped egg mold on Amazon. She picked up her fork and began to eat, a happy, contented smile on her face. She looked like a little kid who'd just been given a piece of candy. Seeing her like that, so relaxed and happy, filled my own chest with a warmth I couldn't explain. Was this what falling in love felt like? It wasn't half bad. Oh, she said, suddenly remembering something. I have a meeting today with Benjamin Crawford from Apex Holdings to discuss a new partnership, but I'm not feeling well. I really don't want to go. Apex Holdings. I paused. The CEO, Benjamin Crawford, is he a short, overweight guy who sweats a lot? You know him. Nope, I shook my head. Just a name my dad had mentioned once. Apex was apparently another one of our family's countless subsidiary companies, and Benjamin Crawford was some distant cousin of my father's. What should I do? Victoria sighed. This deal is really important. Don't worry about it, I said. You stay home and rest. I'll go to the meeting for you. Victoria stared at me. You'll go. What? You don't trust me? It's not that, she hesitated. It's just, you're my assistant. So what? I said, looking her in the eye. Isn't an assistant's job to solve problems for his boss? She studied my face for a long moment, then finally nodded. Okay. She handed me a portfolio. Here's all the information on the deal. Just do your best. She didn't sound very confident. She clearly wasn't thrilled about sending her temp to handle such a big negotiation. I just smiled. I changed into a suit, grabbed the portfolio, and drove Victoria's red Bentley to the Apex Holdings headquarters. I walked straight to the top floor and headed for the chairman's office. A secretary tried to stop me. Sir, do you have an appointment? No. Then I'm afraid you can't go in. I ignored her and pushed open the office door. Inside, a bloated, middle-aged man was leaning back in his chair, smoking a cigar. He looked up, annoyed by the intrusion. Who the hell are you? Don't you know how to knock? I tossed the portfolio onto his desk. Marcus Bennett, assistant to President Victoria Sterling of Sterling Enterprises, I said. I'm here to discuss the partnership. Oh. Benjamin Crawford looked me up and down, his eyes full of disdain. Why didn't Victoria come herself? She sent some kid instead. Does she not take Apex Holdings seriously? Miss Sterling wasn't feeling well, I said. Not feeling well. He let out a cold laugh. More like she doesn't want to do this deal, right? Let me tell you something, kid. The line of companies wanting to partner with Apex stretches all the way to Europe. If Victoria Sterling doesn't show up in person today, the deal is off. His arrogance was astounding. I understood his game. He was using the deal to try and force Victoria to come in person so he could make some kind of inappropriate move. A classic corporate power play. I laughed. I walked over, pulled up a chair, and sat down across from him, crossing my legs. Benjamin, I said. I'm not a fan of beating around the bush. You're going to take this deal. The only question is the terms. And here are the terms, I continued, leaning forward. We get 90% of the profits. You get 10. Benjamin Crawford looked at me as if I'd just sprouted a second head. Kid, are you out of your damn mind? He roared, slamming his hand on the desk and shooting to his feet. A 90-10 split. Why don't you just rob me? That's what I'm doing, I nodded. You. Benjamin, I cut him off. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to think it over. After 3 minutes, if you haven't agreed, then you won't have to worry about it anymore, because as of tomorrow, you will no longer be the chairman of Apex Holdings. My voice was quiet, but the words hit him like a thunderclap. He stared at me, at my calm, almost bored expression, and a flicker of fear appeared in his eyes. He must have remembered the rumors that had been flying around town about a mysterious Mr. Bennett who had annihilated Montgomery Industries with a single phone call. Could it be? Sweat started beading on his forehead. Just then, the private line on his desk buzzed. He picked it up, his hand trembling. "Hello." His secretary's panicked voice came through the speaker. "Mr. Crawford, sir, all of our corporate accounts have been frozen." "What?" Benjamin's legs gave out, and he staggered back into his chair. "And sir," the secretary continued, her voice rising in hysteria, "a call just came in from the main headquarters in D.C. They said you've been terminated effective immediately." The phone slipped from Benjamin Crawford's numb fingers. He stared at me, his face a mask of pure terror and disbelief. I stood up and straightened my tie. "Well," I said. "Looks like you've made your decision." I turned to leave. "Wait, please." Benjamin scrambled from behind his desk and threw himself at my feet, grabbing onto my leg. "Mr. Bennett, sir, I was wrong. Please, I was wrong." He sobbed, a pathetic mess of tears and snot. "The deal, I'll sign it. 90-10 is fine." "No, take it all. I don't want a penny." I looked down at the groveling men with disgust. I shook my head. "Too late," I said. "Sterling Enterprises has decided to terminate all prospective partnerships with your company because," I added with a smile, "I find you deeply unpleasant." After settling things at Apex, I drove home. The moment I walked through the door, I was hit by the delicious aroma of cooking. Victoria, wearing an apron, was busy in the kitchen. She rushed out to meet me, her face anxious. "How'd it go? Did you get the deal?" "Yep," I nodded. "Signed and sealed." "Really?" Her face broke into a huge smile. "Benjamin Crawford didn't give you any trouble?" "Not at all," I said. "He was actually a very reasonable guy." "Oh, good." She breathed a sigh of relief, completely unaware that I had just professionally executed the very reasonable Mr. Crawford. "Go wash up," she said. "I tried making your favorite tonight, braised short ribs." I looked at her beautiful face smudged with a little bit of cooking oil, and my heart felt full. This feeling of having someone waiting for you at home. It was good. After dinner, as Victoria was washing the dishes, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar international number. I answered it. "You brat." My father's familiar roar came through the line. "What the hell did you do now?" "I didn't do anything," I said innocently. "Didn't do anything." His voice went up an octave. "You fired Benjamin Crawford. That's what you did. He's been calling me all afternoon, crying his eyes out and tattling on you." "Oh," I said. "Well, you could just tell him I said to get lost." "Of course, I know you told him to get lost," my father bellowed. "My point is, can you try to keep a lower profile? You've only been out there experiencing life for a few months, and you've already turned the entire business world upside down. Is it my fault they keep picking fights they can't win?" I retorted. "Whatever," my dad said impatiently. "I'm not calling to argue. I'm calling about something important. Your grandfather wants to meet your wife." "What?" I froze, almost dropping the phone. "Your grandfather wants to meet Victoria," my father repeated. "He heard through the grapevine that you got married, and now he's having a fit. He wants to fly to New York next week to meet his granddaughter-in-law in person." My blood ran cold. My grandfather was a legend, a man who had built an empire from nothing and commanded respect from world leaders. He was also shrewd, calculating, and nearly impossible to fool. If he met Victoria and discovered that our marriage was just a business arrangement, he'd probably disown me on the spot. Worse, he might do something to Victoria out of some misguided sense of family honor. "Can't you just tell him we're busy?" I tried desperately. "I already tried," my father said. He told me, and I quote, "If that boy doesn't bring his wife to meet me, I'll fly there myself and drag them both back by the ears." That sounded exactly like my grandfather. I sighed heavily. Fine. When? Next Saturday. He's taking his private jet. Be ready. My father hung up without another word. I lowered the phone and turned around to find Victoria standing in the doorway, drying her hands on a dish towel. She'd obviously heard at least part of the conversation. Was that about me? She asked quietly. I nodded. My grandfather wants to meet you. Your grandfather? Her eyes widened slightly. I thought you said you were an orphan. I may have exaggerated that part, I admitted. The truth is, my family is complicated. How complicated? I took a deep breath. Very. My grandfather is basically one of the most powerful men in the world. He's old-fashioned, strict, and terrifying. And he wants to meet my wife next Saturday. Victoria walked over and sat down on the couch, her expression unreadable. After a long moment, she looked up at me. Marcus, who are you really? This was it. The moment of truth. I couldn't keep hiding behind half-truths and deflections anymore. I sat down beside her and took her hand. My full name is Marcus Alexander Bennett, I said quietly. My grandfather is Alexander Bennett Sr. He founded Bennett Global Industries 50 years ago. We have holdings in defense, technology, finance, real estate, and about a dozen other sectors. Our family net worth is, well, let's just say it's more than the GDP of several small countries. Victoria stared at me, her face going pale. You're one of those Bennetts. I nodded. I was supposed to take over the company eventually, but my father thought I was too sheltered, too disconnected from real people. So he sent me out into the world to experience normal life for a year. That's how I ended up working for you. And the contract marriage, she whispered. Was supposed to be a fun diversion, I admitted. A way to kill time while playing office worker. But then. I looked into her eyes. Then it became real. You became real. Victoria, somewhere along the way, this stopped being a game for me. She was silent for a long moment, processing everything. I could see the wheels turning in her head, recalculating everything she knew about me, about us. Finally, she spoke. So when your grandfather meets me, what's he going to expect? He's going to expect a real marriage, I said. A real relationship. He's going to scrutinize every word, every gesture, every glance between us. And if he thinks for 1 second that this is fake, there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? The kind that could hurt both of us, I said honestly. My grandfather doesn't do things halfway. If he thinks you're using me, or that I'm making a mockery of marriage, he'll make things very difficult. Victoria pulled her hand away from mine and stood up, pacing across the living room. I watched her, my heart pounding. This was the moment where she could walk away, declare the contract fulfilled, and disappear from my life forever. Instead, she turned back to me, her chin raised with that familiar stubborn determination I'd come to love. All right, she said. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. No more secrets between us. No more half-truths. And we're going to convince your grandfather that this marriage is 100% real. Victoria. I'm not finished, she cut me off. But after we deal with your grandfather, you and I are going to have a very long conversation about what this really is between us. Because I need to know, Marcus. Is this still just a contract to you, or is it something more? I stood up and walked over to her. I cupped her face in my hands, forcing her to look at me. It stopped being a contract the moment you laughed at my terrible egg joke, I said softly. Victoria Sterling, I fell in love with you somewhere between washing dishes and pretending to be your assistant. And I'm terrified that you don't feel the same way. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. You idiot, she whispered. I fell in love with you when you splashed coffee all over Derek Montgomery on your first day. We both laughed, and then I was kissing her, really kissing her for the first time. Not for show, not for the cameras or gossip columns, but because I loved her and she loved me. When we finally pulled apart, she smiled up at me. So, she said. We have a week to prepare for your terrifying grandfather. What's the plan? I grinned. The plan is simple. We're going to show him exactly what he wants to see, two people completely and hopelessly in love. Well, Victoria said, wrapping her arms around my neck. At least that part won't be difficult. We won't have to fake it. The following week was a blur of preparation. Victoria insisted we needed to know everything about each other, the little details that real married couples would know instinctively. We spent every evening quizzing each other on favorite foods, childhood memories, embarrassing stories, and future dreams. I learned that Victoria had wanted to be a veterinarian when she was little, that she was terrified of thunderstorms, and that she cried every time she watched The Notebook. She learned that I had a scar on my left shoulder from a training accident, that I couldn't sing to save my life, and that my guilty pleasure was terrible reality TV shows. By the time Saturday rolled around, we were as ready as we'd ever be. My grandfather's private jet landed at Teterboro Airport at precisely 10 a.m. Victoria and I drove out to meet him, both of us dressed impeccably. She wore an elegant cream-colored dress that made her look like a princess, and I wore one of my best suits. As the jet's door opened and the stairs descended, I felt Victoria's hand slip into mine. She was trembling slightly. "It's going to be okay," I whispered. "I promise." And then he appeared. Alexander Bennett Sr., a man in his 80s who somehow managed to look like he could still wrestle a bear and win. He had my eyes, or rather, I had his, steel gray and piercing. He stood at the top of the stairs, leaning lightly on a cane carved from ebony, surveying us like a general inspecting his troops. He descended slowly, deliberately, each step measured and purposeful. When he reached the bottom, he stopped directly in front of us. The silence stretched out, tense and heavy. Finally, his stern expression cracked, and he broke into a wide smile. "Well, boy," he said in a voice like rolling thunder. "Are you going to introduce me to this beautiful young lady, or are you just going to stand there like a statue?" I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Grandfather," I said formally. "This is my wife, Victoria Sterling." "Victoria, this is my grandfather, Alexander Bennett Sr." Victoria extended her hand gracefully. "Mr. Bennett, it's an honor to meet you." My grandfather ignored her hand and pulled her into a warm embrace instead. "None of that Mr. Bennett nonsense," he said. "You're family now. Call me Grandpa." When he released her, I saw tears in Victoria's eyes. She hadn't expected warmth, she'd been bracing for an interrogation. My grandfather noticed too, and his expression softened even further. "Come," he said, gesturing toward the car. "Let's go somewhere we can talk properly. I want to know everything about the woman who finally tamed my wild grandson." We drove to a private dining room at one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. Over lunch, my grandfather regaled Victoria with embarrassing stories from my childhood, while I sat there mortified and wondering if I could fake a medical emergency to escape. But as the meal progressed, I noticed something. My grandfather wasn't just making conversation. He was watching us, carefully observing every interaction, every glance, every unconscious gesture of affection. He was testing us. At one point, Victoria reached across the table to wipe a bit of sauce from the corner of my mouth with her napkin, a gesture so natural and intimate that I almost didn't notice it. But my grandfather did. His eyes lit up with something that looked like approval. Later, when Victoria excused herself to use the restroom, my grandfather leaned across the table. "That one," he said, pointing in the direction she'd gone. "She's special." "I know," I said simply. "Do you love her?" I met his gaze directly. "More than anything." He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Good. Your grandmother would have liked her." Coming from him, that was the highest compliment possible. When Victoria returned, my grandfather stood up. "I have a gift for you, my dear," he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. He opened it to reveal a stunning antique ring, a large ruby surrounded by diamonds, set in platinum. "This was your great-grandmother's ring," he explained. "It's been passed down through our family for 4 generations. I want you to have it." Victoria's hands flew to her mouth. "Mr. Bennett." "Grandpa. I can't. This is too much." "Nonsense," he said firmly, taking her left hand and slipping the ring onto her finger next to her wedding band. "You're a Bennett now. This is your legacy too." As we said goodbye at the airport that evening, my grandfather pulled me aside one last time. "Marcus," he said quietly. "I don't know how you found her, and I don't care. All I know is that she looks at you the way your grandmother looked at me. Don't let her go. Men like us only get one great love in our lifetime. She's yours." "I know, Grandpa," I said, my throat tight with emotion. He nodded, satisfied, and boarded his jet without another word. In the car on the way home, Victoria was quiet, staring at the ruby ring on her finger. "He believed us," she finally said. "Of course he did," I replied. "Because it's true." She turned to look at me, her eyes shining in the dim light of the car. "Marcus, what happens when the year is up? What happens to the contract?" I pulled the car over to the side of the road, put it in park, and turned to face her fully. "Victoria Sterling," I said. "Will you marry me?" She laughed, tears streaming down her face. "We're already married, you idiot." "I know," I said. "But the first time was a contract. This time, I want it to be real. I want to marry you again, for real, with all our friends and family there. I want to spend the rest of my life making you laugh, protecting you from corporate raiders, and doing the dishes while you cook terrible dinners that we both pretend are delicious." "My dinners are not terrible," she protested, laughing through her tears. "Victoria," I said seriously. "Last week you somehow managed to burn water." "Okay, fine, my dinners are terrible," she admitted. "But yes. Yes, I'll marry you again. For real this time." I kissed her there on the side of the road, with cars honking as they passed us, not caring about anything except the woman in my arms and the life we were going to build together. 6 months later, we had a real wedding. Victoria's grandfather walked her down the aisle, my grandfather served as my best man, and both our fathers spent the entire reception arguing about whose child had made the better match. It was perfect. As for the contract, we framed it and hung it in our home office as a reminder of how our love story began. With a ridiculous piece of paper, a cup of spilled coffee, and 2 people who were both terrible at pretending they didn't care. My name is Marcus Alexander Bennett. I'm a bodyguard by trade, an elite force operator by training, and the luckiest man in the world by pure chance. Because the day I walked into that office and splashed coffee all over a trust fund brat was the day my real life began. And I wouldn't change a single thing.